Hey guys, it's Levi with XDynamics, and in today's video, I'm going to give you guys my 5 tips for getting more cinematic drone footage with your Evolve 2. Alright, so I don't know this to be 100% true, but I'm pretty sure I've flown the Evolve 2 pretty much more than anyone in the world. Whenever we're shooting, I'm usually our main pilot for the video, and through all that flight time, I've learned a lot about how to get great cinematic shots with the Evolve 2, and I'm going to pass that knowledge on to you guys in these 5 tips. Migs, can you come film me? All right, so let's get into it. Tip number 1, have a flight plan in place. Have an idea of where you're shooting, what the weather's going to be like, and have a shot list in place. Personally, I like to do some sort of location scouting, either doing it all online if you have to, but ideally going there in person and maybe even getting a test flight in before you actually shoot during some prime time light. Hold on, we got cars. If you're gonna do it online, I like to use just simple stuff like Google Earth or Google Maps. It does a really good job of giving you an idea of what the area looks like without actually going there in person. So now that you have some sort of idea of where you're filming and what the location looks like through your location scouting, I like to have a shot list in place so that way when you launch, you're not flying around wasting battery just looking at the area. You're immediately going and getting shots that you're gonna be using for your video. So now that you've done the location scouting and you got a shot list, you gotta check the weather. I personally check the weather religiously. I've been screwed over too many times by one single app, so I actually cross-check the weather on multiple apps. That's just me, I'm a little crazy about it, but you should definitely do at least a simple weather check so that you know it's gonna be safe weather and it's gonna be weather that looks nice as well. Tip number 2 is gonna be camera settings. Now, I'm just gonna tell you how I like to set up the camera for getting cinematic footage, but I'm not gonna do a deep dive into the settings. I'm gonna assume that you have some basic knowledge of how camera settings work and how they relate to changing the image. I prefer to shoot at 4K, 60 frames per second. I don't need the video to be as slow as 120 frames per second, and the 24 frames per second just doesn't give me the flexibility of slowing down the footage if I wanted to, so I prefer to go at 60p. So using the basic 180-degree shutter rule, we end up at 1/120th with the shutter speed, and I like to keep the 17mm Olympus that I usually fly with at 3.5 to 5.6 to keep a cinematic look, but it's still nice and sharp. 2 more final tips. I like to fly in a log format. So with the Evolve 2 from XDynamics, it's called X-Log. That's gonna give you that extra bump of dynamic range. Lastly, I like to fly with the histogram to make sure I'm not blowing out the highlights or crushing the darks. Tip number 3, it's gonna be about ND filters and using different focal lengths. So the ND filter isn't even optional at this point. If you're gonna be using the cinematic camera settings that were in tip 2, the ND filter is a must. For shooting at low shutter speeds and a wide open aperture, you have to cut down on that light or the image is gonna be overexposed. So we like to use these Polar Pro ND filters. We got this pack that goes from a 64 down to a ND4, and it's really a necessity. Get yourself some, there's a lot of options out there. Now for my favorite part of using the Evolve 2, is the ability to use multiple focal lengths. So I go through 4 different lenses. I got a 12mm, a 17mm that I usually fly with, 25mm, and a 45 to get really close up on things. And this is just great for not only getting cinematic shots, but for storytelling. You can get different perspectives and really change the look of your video. And I really suggest trying to pick up more than one focal length if you're flying the Evolve 2. It's a big benefit of being able to switch out the lenses. All right, tip number 4, we're gonna talk about drone movements. So to achieve that cinematic feel, you want your moves to be smooth and fluid, whether it's a slow push shot or a fast tracking shot on a subject. You want it to be smooth and fluid to achieve that cinematic look. Now, the Evolve 2 actually really helps you out in that way because there's features that allow you to fine tune the sticks so that you don't get any herky-jerky movements and all your movements can be nice and smooth. One of my favorite things to do is tilt the gimbal up. The Evolve 2 has up to 20 degrees of upward tilt on the gimbal. It's a really unique look that you don't see very often from drones. Last tip, it seems so obvious, but pick a beautiful place and time to shoot. We all like to shoot in beautiful landscapes or interesting cityscapes. So get out there and shoot these places. The viewers want to see it, and it's fun for you to shoot there as well, and it's only going to improve your video and your cinematography. Last thing, go out during prime time light. My favorite time is golden hour, about 30 minutes after sunrise or before sunset. I just avoid shooting in this midday sun where there's no clouds and everything's blown out. If you're gonna shoot midday, I like an overcast day because you're using the biggest softbox in the world and things still look pretty nice. All right everyone, I hope these 5 tips help you get more cinematic footage out of your drone. I'm heading home, it's way too hot out here. So remember, do your flight planning, get your settings right, get the right gear for the job, practice your drone moves, and please fly in beautiful and nice light. Once again, I'm Levi Thompson with XDynamics, and I'll see you guys in the next one.